All of this is extremely inaccurate. The original Castlevania series by Netflix holds a very special place in my heart. Each season out of the four have an excellent momentum, and each storyline slowly but eventually develops the characters in a fantastic manner before reaching a gorgeous conclusion altogether. The series was filled with interesting characters and ideologies, a hauntingly beautiful world, and the external and internal conflicts were built brilliantly by creating exciting dynamics between the characters. So, did Castlevania Nocturne outclass its predecessor in every possible way? Well, no, and honestly, it doesn't really need to. Castlevania Nocturne is a completely fresh take on the characters and lore of the series in a brand new setting of French Revolution. The story centers around the life of Richter Belmont, the last descendant of the Belmont clan who suffers from PTSD after watching his mother die by the hands of a vampire named Olrox at the age of 10. Now, describing the plot of the first season alone is really difficult for me, and it's not just because of the insane twist, but also because of the fact that the show has two supporting leads alongside Richter in the story. First, you should meet Maria Renard. Maria is one of the leading members of the revolutionary team of France, which is fighting against vampires and creatures of the night for freedom. She has a brother-sister relationship with Richter, so please don't make any weird shit up, and she lives with her mother Tara. Next up we have Annette. She is a runaway slave from Saint Dominique, which is a French colony located in the western portion of the Caribbean island. She travels all the way to find Richter with her friend Eduardo, who is a soap opera singer from the same colony, to gain an ally in the fight against the creatures of the night. Now, the story has a lot of amazing details. Richter's relationships and background are like 60% of season 1, and the remaining 40% are divided further, with 20% of focus on character development of Annette and Maria, and the rest of the 20% is given to the world building and antagonist. With 300 years of gap, the series shows that it has truly evolved with its magic and combat, but at the same time it hasn't missed a step with its foundation, which were built from the original series. The first 4 seasons did a fantastic job at showcasing a war between humans and different vampire societies, which eventually led to one of the most insane finales. And now with Nocturne, the series throws its characters immediately into a setting where they must tackle external and internal conflicts. What makes this more interesting for me honestly is that in this new story, the leading characters are in their late teens and early 20s, which leave out a lot of room for development. It's good to see that Richter and co have their own personalities and aren't one-to-one copies of the characters from the original series. There are hints of similar characteristics of Trevor and Sypha in the new cast, but it will take some more time before we watch them grow into mature adults. But before we go any further, I must address the elephant in the room. Why do people hate Castlevania Nocturne so much? Well, people have accused Nocturne for having bad writing, and by that I mean they don't like how Annette has been changed from a white person to a black person. Now you see, I would agree with this stance in a lot of cases, but the creative team of the show have completely won me over by correctly using the thematic approach of the setting of the series. The French Revolution was a series of events where the civilians were treated unjustly by the royals and corruption was widespread. So having vampires as the royal society throughout the French colonies and having humans struggle out of slavery and discrimination is honestly one of the most bold and genius moves the showrunners of the series could have possibly taken. Vampires not only rob people of their riches, but also fight a war against the revolutionary leaders like Maria to fulfill their hunger. Seriously, how are so many people hiding this under the rug? The only part I don't like about this show is that they made Olrox gay, because it adds zero depth to the plot, and they pulled this kind of shit in the original series too, and it also made no sense back then either. If you have watched my first video on the Castlevania animated series, then you'd remember how I mentioned that a lot of the lore from the video games was interpreted in different way in the Netflix series. You see, that is a good thing, because like I mentioned in that video, back during the NES days, the main focus was on the gameplay and not on the story. The premise was only given for some sort of motivation to the player. The Lords of the Shadow game also interpreted the lore of the series to tell a different story, just like the first 4 seasons of the Netflix series did. And in the similar way, they also apply this to Nocturne without disconnecting some of the key elements introduced in the original series. Also, people are acting as if the original Annette wasn't a damsel in distress in the games like the original Ashley from Resident Evil 4. Nocturne also utilized the groundwork laid by the original series by taking advantage of certain characters' backgrounds and linking them to their own characters. The blend between actual history and the dark fantasy setting of Castlevania becomes a treat to watch after certain character introductions which continue to raise the stakes. Probably the bravest turn that the writers took with the series is that they made the characters flawed. Nocturne is not a show about mature adults who breeze through their personal conflicts with a single character moment. Every person in the show has a different nightmare, a different fear, and a unique flaw which the show openly admits. The relationships and twist in the story purely exist to address these insecurities of these characters. People call out the series for making Richter look like a coward, but these are the same people who don't understand that we as an audience or player did not get any development of Richter in Rondo of Blood or Symphony of the Night. If you want a show with pre-established character motivations with zero room for development and copycats of the original series, then Nocturne is not a show for you. Castlevania Nocturne is indeed a little rough around the edges, but it doesn't make it not worth watching. The good of this show still outweighs the bad by a lot, with a gorgeous blend of reality and fiction, beautiful choreographed fight sequences, a well-directed and creative world building, and reliance on a long-term narrative building. Nocturne is leading up to a much darker and brutal take on the world of Castlevania, in which I would most certainly invest my time into and would encourage the rest of you to do the same.